For such a time as this, I'm Chaim Goldman. Genesis 1:14 and 15. And God said, "Let light come to be in the expanse of the heavens, to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and for years, and let them be for lights in the expanse of the heavens, to give light on the earth." And it came to be so. Well, welcome to another episode of For Such a Time as This. Today's episode, number 8, is called Radical Obedience. Yes, radical obedience. And for such a time as this, I am putting out the call for radical obedience. In the Bible, when you look at the way numbers are used, 7, the Sabbath number, is the number of completion, while 8 is new beginnings. And as this is number 8, I am calling you to a new beginning. We are right now, it is May 4th, may the 4th be with you, May 4th, 2020. And we have probably gone through, in some ways, the worst possible April that we ever could have. I have other teachings. I'd love you to look at them about a kingdom perspective regarding this whole coronavirus mayhem. And I hope that it was in a lot of ways a very powerful month for you, and actually will be looked back at a great month for you. But based on everything that the world's going through, not really what we would have chosen. The reason for that, I would suggest, is that we are not following His ways. We are not being obedient to the Creator of the universe. We need radical obedience, and we as a world, and I will say even as a body of Messiah, the church, are not obedient almost in any way. And I know that that's a big claim, and if you don't fit into that, well, hallelujah, welcome here. But I'm calling you to new beginnings. I'm calling you to a different way of thinking. I'm calling you to a different level. I am calling you to radical obedience. If you don't think you're ready for it, you're right, you're not. If you don't think you can be it, you're wrong. Because the Holy Spirit was given to us. If you're a believer in Yeshua Messiah, if you're not a believer in Yeshua and Jesus the Messiah, well, I guess we should talk, or you should talk to somebody about that, or you should go back to the Bible and you should read it for yourself. Whatever you need to do to get into the kingdom through the blood and the finished work of Yeshua Messiah, I suggest it to those of you who are in. The Holy Spirit has been given to us to lead us into all truth. It has also been given to us through grace, and grace is not the liberty to sin. In fact, grace is the empowerment to walk in the ways of the Almighty, the Creator, via the instruction book that He gave us, to put gas in the tank, as I like to say, to put the power behind what the Father has commanded us to do. And what the Father has commanded us to do is to be holy as He is holy. Now, you can't hear that with all seriousness and not say, really? We are called to that level of holiness? Well, I'm not going to go into that. I know I say a lot. I'm going to go into that later because I'm trying to keep these short to around 10 minutes, and I haven't been so successful, and I'm going to try today. But we are not called to be as the Father. That level of holiness is absolutely beyond our capacity in this human body. But there is one who came to earth, Yeshua Messiah, Jesus, and He did walk perfectly in the Father's commandments. The thing that this teeters on, what your mindset is did Yeshua walk in the Father's ways perfectly so that we don't have to, or to show us the way? And the way I look at that, I'm a father of 6 children. Would I be right to say, would it even be sane for me to say that as long as my eldest child, my son, who is about to turn 17, if he walked perfectly and worked to walk perfectly, if he was sinless, if he did everything that I and my wife, his mother, asked him to do, and I said, wow, you are just the perfect eldest son, would I then say to the rest of my children, my other 5 children, you know what? The oldest son is so awesome that you can do whatever you want. You can just do whatever you want and it's fine with me. No. And if you're a parent, you would never do that if you have more than one child. In fact, what we look toward, and this is why I believe that the oldest is to get a double portion of the inheritance of the family, is because they bear so much of the burden, is that we say they're an example. When the oldest walks in holiness and obedience to the parents, it is an awesome example to the other children in how to walk. If they walk in rebellion, then it's an awful example, and it will encourage the younger children to walk in rebellion. So let us look to Messiah Yeshua, who was completely and utterly obedient to the Father, as an example of how we are to walk. If you can wrap your mind around that, then let's keep going. There are 3 levels of obedience that I understand and that I explain to my children. First there's rebellion. That's not obedience at all. But if we're going to get into the obedience realm, level 1 we do out of fear. Level 1 we do to not get punishment. Don't break the rules because you're going to end up in jail. That would be low level. It's a very immature level of obedience. It's better than rebellion, but we need to keep going. Level 2 is to be obedient because we want a reward. We don't do it out of fear, but it's still a selfish desire. It's, I want something out of this. One is not wanting a negative. This is wanting a positive. And the Bible absolutely, read Deuteronomy 28, 29, the blessings and the curses, and this is a consistent theme, that blessings come from obedience. So, and punishment comes from disobedience. We see that play out all the time in our families, in our court systems, in our just court systems. But that's still immature. When we want to be mature sons and daughters, what we need to do is rise to the 3rd level of obedience, and that is because of love. The love that the Father shows us, we show back. We're not obedient because we don't want to be punished. We're not obedient because we want reward. We certainly don't want to be obedient to try to earn salvation. That isn't the way that it works. But because the Father loves us so much that while we were yet sinners, Yeshua died for us, that we respond to that love through obedience. And so being obedient, being radically obedient, is understanding our relationship with our Father in heaven. There was so much love, so much unity. I and the Father are one, Yeshua said, that he only did what the Father told him to do, the Father who sent him. He saw what the Father was doing, he did it. He heard what the Father's message was, and he did it. And he certainly, being there from the creation and all things created through him, when the world was created and when the instructions were given, that was given through Yeshua Messiah. So his commandments, the commandments of Messiah Jesus, are not different from the commandments of the Father. They are identical. They are one. And any philosophy, any theology to the contrary is really what's called antinomian. It's teaching against the law, the instruction. And if I have a child in my house who is teaching against the rules that I and my wife have established for our household, we consider that to be disobedience. How much more so the Creator of the universe, who made you, who knows you, who put forth his word as the instruction manual for the universe, when you, like it says in Matthew 5, that those who break his commandments and teach others to do so are considered least in the kingdom, and those who keep his commandments and teach others to do so are considered great in the kingdom. They're both in the kingdom. We don't get into the kingdom through our obedience. But once we are citizens in the kingdom, we are called to, yes, radical obedience. And we are in an age right now, I believe that we've passed over, and I said this in an earlier recording, I sort of went over it quickly, but I believe that we've entered into the end of the age. Really, by what we're seeing on the earth today, I see that there are great indicators of that. And so it is time for the sons and the daughters of God, of Elohim, of our Creator, to be revealed. The creation is groaning for it. But when that happens, when we're talking about true sons and daughters who are royalty and are ambassadors, true ambassadors of the kingdom, we need to walk according to the rules of the kingdom, the instructions of the kingdom, the statutes of the kingdom, the laws of the kingdom, because part of those laws are gravity and all these laws of physics and other laws of science. But we tend to think of his instructions about how we are to live not in the same way, but they are. If you walk in my ways, you'll be blessed. If you don't, you'll be cursed. It's not because he doesn't love us either way. It's just the way the universe works. And we need to understand that if we're going to be obedient. So while this perfecting of holiness is going on the planet, hopefully in you, and it's really about what happens through people by the Holy Spirit, that is how the kingdom is coming to the planet. There are things that we need to do to take dominion here, but really this perfecting of the sons and daughters of God, we have to realize that there's an opposite. There is a perfecting of evil. And if you're wondering what's going on the earth today and how can things be like this, there's also a perfecting of evil that's going on. Evil is so good at what it does. It's tricked us for so long. And really, to understand this message, what we have to sadly admit is that there is perfect evil possible, and that it's present or close to present on the earth today, that there are people who are operating according to evil, and they are willing to do these things that we just can't even conceive that people would do. And yet people are doing it. And if we don't wrap our mind around that, as sad as that is to do, we will never see the reality about what we're supposed to do as the perfected, the holy, the radical obedient sons and daughters of God. So what are you called to do as this message goes over? What are you called to do? Well, go to the challenge, episode 6 of this podcast series, the challenge about finding out who you are, why you were put on the planet, and doing it for such a time as this. And please go back and watch that. But at this recording, again, this is May 4th. It is also the 23rd day of the Omer. This is a period of time after Passover, first fruits, wave sheaf offering. We start counting 50 days to what is known as the Feast of Weeks, Shavuot, and in Christianity, it's also known as Pentecost. Interesting that on the same day that the Torah was given at Mount Sinai, Shavuot, the Spirit fell on the early believers in Jerusalem. Same exact day, 50 days after this. Judaism counts it a little different. I won't go into that. In my study, I've been convinced that it always begins on the first day of the week on a Sunday, counts 7 weeks, and lands us this year on May 31st. And so as we're counting down another 26 days to that, wherever you're listening to this, I believe that there's a true prophetic moment. People have said coronavirus, ended on Passover and we got our freedom and we're coming out. I agree, but Passover is inextricably connected to Shavuot, to Pentecost. And I believe that on that day, that is a day for constituting a nation. It happened when Israel got to Mount Sinai with the mixed multitude, and it happened about 1,500 years later when the early group of believers, where there were those in Jerusalem from all over the world who heard this call from the original disciples when the Spirit fell. And there were 3,000 who came in, and they were called to radical obedience, and they started a movement of the Spirit that is still with us today. But we're being challenged in this time for such a time as this. I believe that the way we've been seeing things playing out in this year 2020, that this Shavuot, that this Pentecost is going to be huge, and it's time to reconstitute the nation. We're not going back to Babylon. We're not going to rebuild on sand. We're going to rebuild on the rock. And so as I finish this, I invite you, there's a part 2 to this. I wanted to keep this short, so there's a part 2 where I'm going to go deeper into this and explain this. Please look at the link below the video and watch part 2. And so you'll know what I'm talking about and what I'm calling you to. And in that, I'm going to talk about the fact that we're going to start meeting. If you're inspired, if you know that in your town, I'm in Colorado Springs, if you're here, I want to hear from you locally. Whatever city you're in, whatever place you're in, if you're in the United States, if you're on the planet, we're going to have meetings. Now Zoom is the thing that everybody can meet on, so we're going to do that right away. And there's going to be information about how you can contact me to get information about how to do that. If you feel called to radical obedience, then please continue, watch video 2, and join me in bringing holiness to yourself and being a true ambassador to this world for such a time as this.